United States is huge and full of surprises. Geographic twists that might just change the way you see the country. Whether you love geography or simply enjoy a great fun fact, these 10 incredible U.S. geography facts will amaze you. From unexpected borders to a lake that vanishes every year, get ready to uncover some of America's most fascinating natural wonders. Let's dive in. You'd think comparing a country to a continent would be a no-brainer. Europe has over 40 countries. The US? Just one. So it has to be smaller, right? Well, not quite. The entire United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, covers about 3.8 million square miles. Europe? Slightly more, and around 3.9 million. But here's the twist. Over a third of Europe's landmass is Russia, and most of that isn't even in Europe. It's in Asia. Take Russia out of the equation, and suddenly Europe is actually smaller than the US. And don't even get me started on Alaska. That one state alone is bigger than France, Germany, Spain, and Italy combined. So yeah, the US may be a single country, but in terms of sheer size, it punches way above its weight. Imagine living in America, but having to drive through another country just to reach your neighbors. Welcome to Point Roberts, Washington. This tiny town exists because of a simple line drawn on a map. In the 1800s, the US and Britain agreed to set the border at the 49th parallel. Seems simple, right? Except that straight line sliced right through a corner of British Columbia, leaving a small patch of land south of the border, and technically part of the United States. That patch became Point Roberts. Today, around 1,000 people call it home. They use US dollars, vote in American elections, and have Washington state zip codes. But daily life? It's anything but simple. To get groceries, go to school, or visit the rest of the US, residents have to cross into Canada, and then cross back into the United States. 2 international border checks, just to run errands. It's one of the clearest examples of how a line on a map can shape real, everyday geography. And in Point Roberts, that line defines everything. You might not expect it, but the most extreme weather on Earth, it hits right in the middle of America. Every single year the skies open up, and the US becomes a tornado magnet like nowhere else on the planet. And it all comes down to one thing: geography. Picture this. Freezing air swoops down from the north, hot steamy winds rise up from the Gulf, and dry gusts barrel in from the deserts out west. Right where they crash into each other, boom, tornadoes are born. This storm showdown happens over a region called Tornado Alley, and it earns that name year after year. Texas leads the way, but Oklahoma? It's punched above its weight more times than we can count. Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, all in the danger zone. And don't forget Florida. It gets its fair share when tropical storms spin off the coast. Some of these twisters tear across the land at speeds over 200 miles per hour, flipping trucks, shredding rooftops, and turning a calm afternoon into total chaos. So yeah, if there's one place where the weather loves to show off, it's right here in the United States. It sounds impossible, but you can actually travel through 14 US states in a single unbroken straight line. It all starts in Washington state, way up in the Pacific Northwest. From there, the line slides through a narrow strip of Oregon, cuts across the panhandle of Idaho, and just barely brushes the edge of Montana. Then it powers on, straight across Wyoming, Nebraska, and Kansas. But it doesn't stop there. It continues southeast, passing through Missouri, a tiny corner of Arkansas, and a long stretch of Tennessee. From there, the path rolls through Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and finally reaches northern Florida. Almost 2,500 miles, 14 states, one straight shot. On a flat map, the line looks a little curved, thanks to map projection, but on a globe, it's an almost perfect straight line. Most people don't realize it, but the border between the US and Canada, it isn't marked by a wall, or a fence, or any kind of barrier at all. Instead, it's defined by a clearing through the forest, just 20 feet wide, and it stretches for thousands of miles. They call it the Slash, a narrow, deforested strip that runs across nearly the entire 5,500-mile border from Maine, all the way to Alaska. Wherever dense forest once stood, it's been cut away, leaving behind a visible path you can spot from the ground and even from space. So why does this exist? Simple. It's a way to physically mark the international divide without building a massive wall or fence. To help pinpoint the line, there are over 8,000 stone markers spaced along the border. And it's all kept up by the International Boundary Commission, which clears out overgrowth about once every 55 years. The cost? Surprisingly low, just about 50 cents a year per US taxpayer. Unlike the southern border, this one's unfenced, unpatrolled by the military, and stands as the longest undefended international border in the world. But don't get the wrong idea. Just because it looks wide open doesn't mean you can just walk across. You still need to go through official checkpoints. It's hard to imagine now, but Central California? It used to be underwater. Thousands of years ago, a massive lake called Lake Corcoran covered the entire Central Valley. Fed by melting glaciers and heavy rain, this ancient lake stretched for hundreds of miles, making it one of the largest bodies of freshwater in all of North America. But it didn't stay that way. Eventually, the water rose too high and broke through the valley's western edge. What followed was a massive flood as the lake emptied out toward the Pacific Ocean. What was left behind was a smaller but still enormous lake, Lake Tulare. For years, it held the title of the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi and the 6th largest in the entire US. And the land it exposed? Rich, fertile, perfect for farming. But as agriculture took hold, so did the demand for water. Farmers, backed by the government, built dams, rerouted rivers, and slowly drained Lake Tulare for irrigation. It started gradually, then it accelerated. And today, that once mighty lake is gone, replaced by fields, farms, and dry soil. Not because of natural climate change, but because of us. A forgotten chapter of California's history, buried beneath rows of crops. Alaska isn't just the westernmost US state, it's also the easternmost. Sounds impossible, but it's completely true. And it all comes down to one remote chain of islands, the Aleutian Islands. These islands stretch so far west from mainland Alaska, they actually cross the international date line, the invisible line where the calendar flips and time resets. It also separates the eastern and western hemispheres. But here's the crazy part. Some of those islands, like Attu Island, lie just east of that line, which means they're technically in the eastern hemisphere. So even though Alaska sits way out west on the map, it actually holds the easternmost point in the entire United States. One part of Alaska is at 179 degrees west, another 172 degrees east. It's the only US state that exists in both hemispheres. So yeah, Alaska doesn't just break the ice, it breaks the map. Think all US states are cozy neighbors? Think again, because some US states are actually closer to foreign countries than they are to parts of their own country. Let's start with Alaska, because once again, Alaska doesn't follow the rules. At its narrowest point, it's just 55 miles from Russia, and on a clear day, you can actually see it right across the Bering Strait. Meanwhile, the nearest US state, Washington, is over 500 miles away. So yes, Alaska is geographically closer to Russia than to the mainland United States. Now, head east to Maine. Northern Maine hugs the Canadian border so tightly that in some towns it's faster to drive into Canada than to reach another US city. Maine shares a border with just one US state, New Hampshire, but it shares 600 miles of border with Canada. So yeah, we often imagine the US as one big connected country, but geography, it has other plans. Wyoming is massive. Over 97,000 square miles. That's bigger than most countries in Europe. But here's the twist. Fewer than 600,000 people live there. Yep, it's the least populated state in the entire US. Even Alaska, with its frozen tundra and rugged wilderness, has more people than Wyoming. Right next door, Colorado has about the same land area, but more than 5 million residents. So what's going on? Well, Wyoming was never designed for crowds. Its roots run deep in ranching, mining, and wide-open landscapes. No megacities, no dense suburbs, just rolling plains, quiet towns, and more wildlife than people. And that silence? That's not an accident. It's part of the plan. Wyoming didn't miss out. It opted out. A state that chose space over sprawl and still lives by that choice today. On most maps, Hawaii looks tiny. Just a few scattered islands floating in the Pacific. But that picture? It doesn't even come close. Because Hawaii isn't just one place, it's a massive volcanic chain, stretching over 1,600 miles across the ocean. Most people only know the 8 main islands, but in reality, there are around 137 islands, atolls, reefs, and underwater volcanoes. So why don't we see them? Because most of them are hidden beneath the surface. What we call Hawaii today is just the tip of enormous underwater mountains. The oldest ones, like Midway Atoll, are barely above sea level, eroded by millions of years. But the youngest? The big island of Hawaii, it's still active, still growing. So yeah, Hawaii might seem small, but beneath the surface it tells a story of fire, stone, and time. And what we see on the map? That's just the beginning. And there you have it, 10 geography facts that prove the US is full of surprises. If this video taught you something new, hit that subscribe button. And which fact amazed you the most? Let me know in the comments below.